The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
CJ, another opportunity for us to talk about the Colorado Avalanche and how good they've been playing. I had an idea of doing a very early awards watch, but then our producer, before our show got going, our producer laid down the gauntlet and said, we will have none of that. It's too early to do an early awards watch. But I do think Nathan MacKinnon is the front runner for the Hart Trophy, and I think he deserves some love. Yes, the hottest of takes from the CJ show. Breaking news, Nathan MacKinnon is the best player right now this season, or the most valuable.
The only reason I was on board with your suggestion of doing the awards is that it wasn't going to take much thought. Because, Nathan MacKinnon gets the first, second, and third ballot. I mean, frankly, if you're going to actually have that debate, and we won't go into the award thing, no. I mean, it would probably be between him and his teammate, Cale Makar. There might be some out there beating the drum for Makar, and that's totally fair. But, I mean, it's not even close right now, to me, MacKinnon and the rest of the league. And, it is a moment in time. So I'm not trying to be like the greatest player ever and he's supplanted McDavid or all that. But there's no question through the first 26 games the Avs have played who the best player in the league is. And, you just even look at the fact the Avs are outscoring teams 37-9 at 5-on-5 when he's on the ice. It basically tells you they're up 1-0 in 5-on-5 play on average every game. And given that their goaltenders routinely throw shutouts, I guess that's how you get through 26 games with a 19-1-6 record. So MacKinnon has been on another level. I don't want to make everything about the Olympics, but it's hard not to ignore. You have MacKinnon on this level. You've got Sidney Crosby turning back the clock yet again at his age on a 59-goal pace. You've got the young guys who we've given tons of time to on this pod, but Celebrini, Bedard, Schaefer. I mean, a lot of Canadian players are in form. Just taking a little drive down another avenue that wasn't planned. But none of this is bad news for Team Canada, of course, that you have these guys on this level. And the question for the Avalanche is just like, how do you keep this up? Is there a risk of losing yourself in the moment a little bit, getting ahead of yourselves? I mean, I think that's going to be a real factor in their season. It's going to be a challenge for their head coach, Jordan Binnington, to, keep the flame lit. I guess if there's anything else though, they're playing in the best division in hockey right now. And you don't have to look too far below them to find the Dallas Stars and Minnesota Wild, who both are also not losing very many games these days either. And so perhaps while the rest of the league languishes in middom, the Central will continue peeking along here, and maybe that'll be enough to keep pushing the Avs.
Stealing the word middom to be used in a sentence to be made later.
Yeah, it is a mid-league, though. I mean,
yeah.
Besides the couple teams are mentioning, a few others, Carolina, Tampa's got it going a little bit. But, I mean, there's beyond the top 5 or 6 teams in the league, it really – like, guys, I think I put this in the chat. Some nights it feels like a random results generator. Like, you just don't know which teams are good, who's good. It's just like random results in most games, except for when Colorado plays. You can pretty much count on them coming away with 2 points.
I mean, I will get back to Colorado in a second, but like considering where this league has been at, like as we're talking, Florida's like last place in the Eastern Conference, which imagine telling someone that a couple months ago that would even happen, even with all the injuries that have transpired for them. Like, it's been weird this year.
It has been. And I think years like this are actually good for the sport. I'm not cheering against any team, or I'm not saying it's good that Florida's down or so-and-so is up, but it's not really that. I think having this disruption, though, is positive. I mean, as much as, look, we've had 2 straight Stanley Cup finals with Florida and Edmonton. The Panthers have been to 3 straight finals themselves when you include the 23 final with Vegas. I mean, you tip your hat to greatness, and really Florida is a team that's battling. If they're not already getting the dynasty word, they've got certainly a shot at it. And I'm not counting them out just based on the injuries they have at this point and how compressed the standings are. But big picture here, I mean, this is this is a year where it feels like the ground's shaking a bit, and you're having these new, we're getting excited about some players. Think of the markets those players play in. There hasn't been a lot of excitement for years around hockey. So I do think this is a good year, and we'll see where it all ends up. But Colorado, they do kind of stand alone. Although Dallas and Minnesota, I mean, I don't want to sleep too much on, because those teams have. You look at those three teams, like there's not many losses in the last 30 games if you take each of their last 10 game segments. So they're not alone as being a team that's sort of putting their neck and shoulders above everybody else. But I mean, they've really turnstiled the NHL for the first, couple months of the season.
If Nathan MacKinnon is head and shoulders above everyone in the MVP race, then really how far back is Cale Makar? Because I would love, and I know we've done it before with pitting Bedard and Celebrini against each other, and maybe we don't have to do Makar MacKinnon, but maybe I'll just do it anyway. It would be so funny if Cale Makar, and if there was a MacKinnon-Makar Hart Trophy discussion. Maybe I'm just projecting. Maybe I just like it when people fight. I don't know. But I would love it to see Cale Makar give himself an absolute, and he does have a legit chance at the Hart Trophy, I think, this year. But it's so cool to see those two guys at the top of their powers have a legit chance at the MVP trophy. Sure.
I'll just say my quick bit on this. And I have no problem with a goalie winning the Hart Trophy from time to time, as we had last year with Connor Hellebuyck. He had my top vote. I don't have a problem with a defenseman potentially winning, and it's been 20, 25 years since that's happened, but it has happened in NHL history. But those positions do have a specific award, right? Like Cale Makar basically has his hands all over the Norris again. Last year, of course, Connor Hellebuyck did also win his third Vezina Trophy for the top goaltender in the league, in addition to taking the Hart. But obviously forwards tend to win the Art Ross or the Rocket Richard Trophy for points or goals. But, I'm just saying that I don't mind that defensemen aren't winning this award every year. And it's not because I don't think they're valuable. I just think they are recognized in other ways. And it's becomes a difficult thing to debate. That said, these guys, like they're the two preeminent players at their position this season. I mean, I think there's an argument Makar's there every season, or has been the last number of seasons, just been the best defenseman in the league. If you just, go cumulatively across them, we know Quinn Hughes rightfully gets lots of attention in Vancouver. Zach Werenski's, come on. Some more defensive guys like Jacob Slavin get attention. Jake Sanderson's getting some love in Ottawa, where you're watching the Sens. I mean, look, there's other great defensemen, but I think most people would have Cale Makar clearly number one. For me, MacKinnon's the top forward in the game at this moment. And let's face it, at any given time in the last few years, he probably hasn't been much lower than 3 or 4. You've had obviously McDavid, you've had Kucherov, maybe at times, a few other players, but he's been in that position. And so you're looking at two of the absolute best of what they do. They're literally two pinnacles of the Canadian Olympic team, right? So how do you choose between them? I guess we'll have to wait and see when it comes to a Hart Trophy vote. I still think it's going to trend towards MacKinnon, especially if he keeps this up and, runs away with the scoring race. If he ends up, like right now, he's literally on pace to be like plus 100 this season. Now and I know plus minus is way out of vogue. Like this is my Grazer show on, but trust me, if he finishes at plus 100, people are going to lose their minds. Like, or something like that. And now it's probably not reasonable to expect him or the Avs to continue at the level they're at. It's a long season and all sorts of other things. But, if he's finishing like that, I think there might not be, there's not a debate right now. The good news is it's December 3rd or December 4th, like no one's casting their ballot for some time yet. But if you had to, I can't imagine many of our peers are going anywhere but MacKinnon.
You might even be unanimous. Or you know what? Maybe I shouldn't say that. Well, but
Makar would get a few hipster votes, I think. That's he might. Thing.
Yeah, that's very fair. It would be pretty close to unanimous, I would say. I do think it's cool that MacKinnon is head and shoulders above everyone for this honor. And of course, he has the Stanley Cup in tow. Like, I get Connor McDavid is the number one player in the world and nobody plays like him. But like, I'm cool with Nathan MacKinnon being number 2 and just being almost as fun to watch. Like, you get the finesse of Connor McDavid, but every night watching MacKinnon play, it's like watching a freight train barrel through a rink, and whoever's in front of him, you hope to God they still have their limbs after he runs through you. It's so fun watching MacKinnon play. Like I sometimes I wish I was still in the Western Conference getting to watch him more often because it's so entertaining.
Well, you know what's funny? I was at the Olympic camp in Calgary that the Canadian team had, and he was walking around kind of looking serious as he's wont to do. And someone mentioned to me he might have been the only player there kind of in a bad mood. And apparently part of that bad mood was more than anything, not that he didn't want to be at the camp. Of course, he wants to be a big part of Team Canada. Like that, there's no doubt about that. Went to the World Championships last year, was part of the Four Nations team. But that, they weren't allowed to skate during that event because there's insurance issues. None of the countries did that. But that it was like disrupting his program, I think a little bit might have been part of putting a grump on him. And I mean, that guy is hardwired. Like you can't make people like that. Like I think he can be hard on teammates at times because he literally is so committed, so does things his certain way. And it's to like an extreme level of commitment, even for a pro athlete in terms of what he eats, how he trains, how he lives. Because let's face it, that's a big part of everyone who's at the top's kind of lifestyle. But I think some players almost need, frankly, not a cheat thing. I don't necessarily mean they have to eat pizza or cookies, but I think you almost need a release, right? Like it can't be on all the time. Like that's not healthy for some people, but obviously Nathan MacKinnon's found a way to make it work for him. I mean, he's, even that we all know he's best buddies with Sidney Crosby by this point, but even him and Sid are quite different. I mean, they're elite players, but Sidney Crosby's wired completely differently when you spend time around both of them. Like you can feel it, you can see it. It's I guess a long way of saying that it took MacKinnon a little bit of time to get to this point. It's probably something good to underline, even with Connor Bedard, who clearly is taking a monster step here in his third NHL season. The first 2 years were really good. He was like the youngest player in the league, still getting 60 odd points. Like most people would love for that to be their introduction, but it didn't blow anyone's socks off. And then now he's just, the way he's skating is outrageous. Like it shows up in that NHL Edge data just in terms of his speed bursts. Like you can measure that he is a faster, more dynamic skater. If you prefer not to dig into the numbers, you can just watch like the goal he scored on the rush chance in Vegas, against the grain, cutting to the middle. Like it was just ridiculous. But maybe should be informative to some that yes, some players do arrive and they're kind of like the next one right from day one in the league. And a few players like Nathan MacKinnon has gotten to this lofty place. I think honestly, just through sheer will, work, getting better, getting stronger, getting more dialed in, getting more confident over and over and over again, reps. Now look at him. Like I saw a stat. I wish I had looked it up just before this or like refreshed myself, but I'm pretty sure he's on a similar at this stage of his career to where Crosby was right now. I think he's on a similar points per game, ratio. Like he started behind is the point because he was getting 50 odd points in his rookie year instead of 100 like Sid had. But like the way he's come on, he and McDavid could both finish in the same realm or above Crosby, depending on obviously longevity and other factors. So we're talking special players, and he's still having yet another special season.
Not making you choose, but is it premature for people to obviously consider what Nathan MacKinnon has done and strike the debate of saying, should we say he's better than Connor McDavid? Is that like too far? Is that worth even having a discussion on?
I don't know what it accomplishes, but I think it's a fair discussion. Like it's not I think you could sculpt an argument, and certainly in this moment, it would be hard to argue that MacKinnon isn't performing at a level higher than McDavid. I just think McDavid's done it. If he's had him the last, 5 of the last 6 years, what is this really like in the big picture? I'm not sure that I still think McDavid is going to go down as the better offensive player. That would just be where I would go. But it doesn't mean within the moment there isn't a bit of a tug of war or, rises and falls in careers. I mean, look, I remember this happened in Crosby's career. There were times people would argue, hey, Jonathan Toews, I would take him right now over Sidney Crosby. Because
I was very briefly in that camp.
I'm just saying because he had a lot of success. Now I think that one, and I'm not here to rip down Jonathan Toews. I mean, but I think that one was maybe a little bit like a media creation and not a real thing. But, there was a time there, obviously the Blackhawks were having tons of success and the Penguins had a step back, before they won their cups in 2016 and 17, which kind of balanced the scales. And let's face it, Crosby just hasn't looked back. I mean, the fact that guys, he's still going. It's crazy. He's still going. But I'm losing my train of thought a little bit. I think it's a fair discussion, but ultimately, I think we know where history is likely to land. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not recognizing in the moment a changing of the guard. I'm not sure, but I still see, it's not been a great start for the Oilers. By McDavid standards, it's a poor start, and he's still top 5 in scoring. Like, it's not like he's not scuffling around in 50th place or something in terms of the scoring charts. I still think he's the guy, but in this moment, no question. Like, if there's a ballot to be filled in, you're starting with 29.
Oh yeah, like in other sports, it happens. In the NBA, it happens all the time. Where like LeBron James is the best player in the world, but someone else has to win MVP. Like, right. It happens all the time. And that's totally fine. Like, Nathan MacKinnon could win an MVP this year, and we could all still say Connor McDavid's the best player in the world. Like, I think that's fine. And I think it's cool if it gets to a point where MacKinnon closes the gap enough where you can have that discussion. I think it's all fun. I don't take those discussions super seriously. I think it's fine to have debates on that type of stuff. Like, I don't lose my head, or I try not purposely lose my head over that type of stuff. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun at the end of the day to have that.
It's part of what we're doing here, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're watching people who are just supremely gifted and dedicated, basically exercise in front of us and wow us, and we're discussing it, right? I mean, it's actually, if you just break it down, it's that this is kind of, none of it's all that serious. I mean, it matters to us, or else we wouldn't sit here at all hours of the day and night doing this, but and loving about it and obsessing on it and filling our group chat and all that stuff. I mean, look, I'm not saying it isn't meaningful, but it's not. There's not ever really. There's not a definitive point. I guess even the Stanley Cup, you could sometimes have an argument: did the right team win or lose or whatever? But I guess definitive moments come when a game ends, a series ends, a season ends. A certain player wins a scoring title or a goals race or has the lowest save percentage. But for the most part, this is all just one big giant debate.
Yeah,
for good or ill.
For good or ill, you're absolutely right on that. By the way, you mentioned Connor Bedard very briefly. What'd you think of that shootout goal he scored on Tuesday night? Looked really sick. Yeah,
it was. And the thing that just like one more evidence that I want to enter into the official, in the courtroom here, since, we're adjudicating whether or not Bedard's going to play at the Olympics. Shootouts are part of the Olympics, and Canada's had some fortune, I guess. They did win a shootout in Vancouver, the men's team, but they lost one quite famously in Nagano in 98, and that eliminated them, or ended their gold medal hopes anyway. So just one more thing to say, in addition to the fact the guy is still right near the top of the scoring charts. I know his age. I know where deficiencies he may have or areas he's not as strong at, but he's also got some pretty good shootout moves in that bag of tricks, and I can be sure. I don't know if he's going to change minds, but man, he's really forcing the conversation. Which, again, that's good. Like, that's fun. Like, I didn't think it was going to go this way. I'll be honest. Like, I was at that camp, as I said, and you saw him and Celebrini there, and they're a lot younger than any of the other men's players that were invited, and or a little younger. I mean, I guess Seth Jarvis and some others are kind of in there. Wyatt Johnston's in the same band, but they were the youngest two there from the men's side. And I'm like, are they just here to kind of get the experience, soak it up? I didn't think they'd force the conversation as forcefully as they have. And that, that makes it fun. The management team is meeting this coming weekend. So I think I've actually heard, Julian, that the Finnish team has selected its team.
Okay.
Essentially. And I have to believe, obviously injuries and other things come into play, but I have to believe Canada is probably pretty close. And especially after this weekend, I think a lot of it will be buttoned down pending injuries. So, it's imperative on the guys to keep playing well, because there could be things that change it. But, I actually think Connor Bedard and everyone else, it's almost like submit your test time. We've seen Doug Armstrong and Kyle Dubas, Julian Brisebois, Jim Nill, the other GMs that are involved in this, they've been all over the league, like not just scouting their own teams at all kinds of games. I think it all more or less comes to a head in the coming days for who's going to be on the team. And, we won't find out until December 31st, we meaning the public, but I do think most of it will be kind of locked down by the early next week.
I can't wait till the end of the month until we figure out who's on this damn Canadian team and the American team. All the teams, to be honest with you. It's going to be a fun process. Can't wait for that. Since we keep mentioning the Central Division, we should check in on Dallas. Tough injury news for Tyler Seguin, a torn ACL, an ACL injury, I should say, out long term. Sucks just to begin with the injury itself. Like, sucks for a guy like Tyler Seguin who's had the career that he's had. But off of that, what's next for the Dallas Stars?
And it sucks, and it's also deja vu, right? December 4th, 2024, the Dallas Stars announced that Tyler Seguin has had hip surgery and is going to be out long term. December 3rd, 2025, not quite a full year later, but almost, he's got a torn ACL in his right knee. Mm-hmm. As Glenn Gulletson told the reporters there in New Jersey, he at first said he's probably out months, then he said probably the season. They're still getting a handle on exactly the timelines, but ACL surgery or ACL injuries, because I don't know that the course of treatment's been totally determined just yet, are not short-term injuries. What's changed though in that year, Julian, is the rules. And, I think this is something we're going to probably talk about more with other players and other teams as we get closer to the deadline. But effectively, the simple way to understand this is if they could rule Tyler Seguin out for the entire season and playoffs right now, basically put him on season-ending long-term injury list, which, Alex Pietrangelo on, for example, with Vegas, they being the Dallas Stars, could use his full $9.85 million cap hit to bring in replacements between now and the deadline. If they can't do that, if there's a possibility he returns, and this is where it gets tricky, they can only use the average salary of a player last season, which happens to be $3.82 million. Let's call the delta there $6 million. It's a $6 million difference between there's the potential to have $6 million more one way or the other, or less, to add players depending on, Seguin's health status. And, they don't need to know that today. In fact, they could put him on just normal LTI now, have that 3.82. If it gets closer to, and they have the clarity they need, the consultation with doctors is done. It's clear the return to play and recovery is going to take him into June or July or sometime he can't play. Then they can flip him over and get the full amount. A long way of saying a lot of teams are going to be wrestling with this, right? I mean, it could include the Florida Panthers. Now, I think they seem to expect Alexander Barkov back at some point during this season or during the playoffs. But if he had a setback, or if they got new information, maybe he wasn't healing the way they liked this. Again, this is the hypothetical. They could still then use his full cap hit by the deadline. But teams are going to have to sort of make declarations on players, and these declarations are done between the NHL and the NHLPA. So it's not like a team could just shut down a player. I think it's really what's the actual timeline it's going to be here. So yeah, that's the business end of things. It's pretty shitty for Tyler Seguin to have missed 59 games last season with that hip injury. Did get back. He played the last regular season game, played in the playoffs for the Stars. They got to the Western Conference Final for the third straight year. Doesn't seem like the early prognosis here is as positive of him likely doing that. But, the team's on the road. There's more doctor's appointments scheduled, and we'll see where he ends up. I think either way, whichever way this lands from a cap perspective, I think we should have the Stars as a team that's going to be buying at the deadline and potentially aggressively, depending on what kind of cap space they have to maneuver. I mean, and that's the way they operated last year. I mean, last year they had Miro Heiskanen on LTI at the middle point of the season. They had Seguin, they had Niels Lundqvist. As a result of that, remember, they made not only the Mikael Granlund, Cody Ceci deal, but then, of course, they got Mikko Rantanen right at the deadline itself. So they made some pretty big additions because of, some of the cap maneuvering they were able to do related to injuries. That's changed in the new CBA. Basically, they're trying to make it so the teams, like the high level, the reason this has changed, they're trying to limit the benefit teams could get for the playoffs with injuries in season, which you can understand. But the problem is injuries they're not always just like clear or not, right? It's not like, yes, he can come back or no. Like, it's not all yes or no, that kind of parallel. And so, I think in this case, they'll probably have a clear understanding once they get more opinions on doctors and decide, is there surgery, what's the next steps. It'll probably become clear in this case, but there definitely will be other players as we get closer to the March 6th trade deadline where you're like, oh man, what does a team do? Is he ruled out? Is he not? Because it can have a huge impact on what they can do at the deadline.
So at this point now, we're still waiting for those dominoes to fall ahead of the March deadline. Any chance that we might see something before the roster freeze at the end of the month?
I think there's a chance. I mean, certainly there's still a fair bit of talk around Vancouver, and Kiefer Sherwood specifically. And so I think he's a player, it's not to say he has to move at all before this roster freeze kicks in, but the Canucks are willing to do it if the right sort of teams, you've had expressions of interest from teams, right? And actually including the Dallas Stars are one team unrelated to the Seguin injury. I mean, they called, prior to that fact, to see what it might take. Is there a fit? But, it requires now, does someone escalate it and get a little more urgent and a little more serious and try to make something happen? But I do think it can't be ruled out as a possibility by the roster freeze. And we'll see. I mean, there's still a bit of runway here till December 20th, right? Because sometimes this can be dependent on either performance. I'll mention one, like the Winnipeg Jets have Connor Hellebuyck out. They've been struggling. They're not looking for another goalie, but what happens if they sustain another goalie injury between now and the 20th? Maybe that changes, right? Or if performance related issues, like I think there are things that could force a few dominoes to fall, but I was sort of whining about the lack of trades on our last show, and then we did get another minor league trade, but there really has not been much action yet. But I'm still optimistic that you're going to see it. I mean, you see Calgary and Nashville playing this week in the game. Wouldn't have necessarily called it, but the Predators put the boots to the Flames on that night. But yeah, I think there's a bit of daylight between at least some of those teams at the bottom that maybe the urge to sell at this Christmas season picks up a little bit.
Still not happy that you feel nothing over the Akil Thomas to St. Louis trade. That was a trade. The trade was made, CJ.
I think that for me to count as a real trade for me, the combined games of the players in the trade has to be over 100 NHL games.
Over 100 Okay, fine.
That's arbitrary. I'm being arbitrary.
Come on.
I can't actually remember the exact number, but I know it's not quite 100 in that deal.
Did you see the other night Jordan Binnington getting pulled, and he had a very animated discussion with his head coach, Jim Montgomery, not too far from the 30th anniversary of Patrick Roy. I get it, not necessarily just making the connection because it's goaltending and because we're at the anniversary of Patrick Roy getting pulled in that Detroit Red Wings game before he goes over to the team president and says he's played his last game for the Canadians. I'm not saying Jordan Binnington did the same thing, but it has been a roller coaster season for Jordan Binnington.
Well, I did have a text from someone that night saying, did Jordan Binnington just pull a Patrick Roy? So, I mean, you're not the only person who saw that and thought that. And I get why, just because it, emotional, fiery guy, much like Patrick Roy, but totally different circumstances, right? I mean, the emotions in this case, Jordan Binnington's pulled after 2 goals against in 10 minutes, give or take, of play. I believe Roy was left in for 9 goals against, was it?
Yes, he was.
That infamous night at the Montreal Forum when he goes to Ronald Corey and who's running the team essentially and says, I played my last game. I mean, slightly different, but look, the reason that people are making the parallels are this. I mean, Jordan Binnington's name is at least a little in the rumor mill. I think it's more just the fact that it's not going well in St. Louis. There's not a ton of goaltenders out there available for trade. He's 1 year after this one away from being a UFA. The Blues are shopping other veterans. Like it's a lot of people connecting dots, and I don't think they're unfair dots to connect. That being said, I don't think that game is a break. Nothing broke in that moment. That's a goalie. The St. Louis Blues know and love Jordan Binnington. They know what he's all about. They love that fire in him. And I got the sense, like right from the hop, that even Jim Montgomery and Binnington sort of, that this wasn't a make or break moment in any interpersonal relationships. But I do think it does spotlight, what's going to go on here. Like, how is this going to play out? And I don't have that answer for you, but I do think that Binnington's name has loosely certainly been in the rumor mill before. And the one thing I'll say is if as long as the Blues are in a competitive mind frame as an organization, meaning like they're not retooling or something, I think it would be hard for them to trade Binnington. I know, there's a great fondness for him within that organization for obvious reasons. I mean, he was their fifth goalie at one point and ended up winning the Stanley Cup in the same year. Like that guy clawed through some stuff and took them to the top of the mountain, has had a lot of great moments. He set, franchise goaltending marks for wins and games and all those sorts of things since then. So I don't think they'd part with him easily, but you can never say never, especially because they could get to a point where they are selling off some veterans and doing something of a bit of a retool on the fly. So I'd say stay tuned on your Jordan Binnington trade rumors. And it was an interesting moment, but I mean, I know you don't always love his antics. I find this guy like amusing. Like I love it all.
I don't have this. We don't have to have another discussion on that.
You didn't like the 900 game puck thing, I remember, and 900 goal puck thing, and
I don't like the Kadri thing either. But you know what? I don't need to rehash that. I'm okay with that. If you find it amusing, that's okay.
Well, he's a character in a game where we don't have enough characters. Is kind of what I'm.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I do agree with that. He is a character in a game that desperately needs characters,
and he kind of owns his character. Like I feel like. Yeah, I feel like he doesn't apologize for being him. He doesn't try to make excuses. He just kind of does. I can't defend every action he's ever made. It's just more, I find it, even honestly, like his demeanor at the Four Nations tournament last year was awesome. Like he was basically getting like subtweeted with the questions, right? About Canada's goaltending and how does it feel to be the Canadian goalie that sucks the least? It's like no one was saying that, but like, that was this, and he just like dug in, and like he was doing those. He was polite, but he was like chewing on a nail while answering those questions. And like I just, and he was nails when it mattered. Frankly, I mean, I don't know. I find him kind of an interesting character, and I could see why if you're a team that really thinks you could win, that even though is right now like none of his the above board metrics, the obvious ones like save percentage and goals against average aren't good. The underlying expected goals times the numbers aren't good, or expected saves in his case. I still think he's someone you feel like you can win with, which is why I don't think St. Louis will look to move him unless they really just feel it's time to start rebooting things.
Anyone else from St. Louis top of mind if they do go down the road of a retool that might be worth mentioning on ahead of deadline day talk? Sorry, I stumbled a lot there, but you get what I mean.
I'm following you. I think Braden Shen's name will get more prominent. I mean, he had a full no trade clause last year when his name was circulating through the rumor mill. That's changed since July 1st. It's down to a modified no trade clause. Might finally be time with him. Justin Falk, a defenseman, plays both sides of the ice, which I think that versatility, flexibility could work for teams. I mean, the Blues definitely have the players. I mean, and who knows if they ever get to Jordan Kyrou. In his case, his name has been out there prior. Obviously, he was involved in some trade discussions, previous to now, but he actually does have the no move clause now. So I don't know how that would go. But the Blues definitely have. There's a reason they're well represented on the first version of the trade board, and I haven't done the second one yet. But I'm put it this way: we're not going to be removing Blues names. I don't think on the second one we might be adding some because they have candidates. But, Binnington's name wasn't on there. We'll see how the goaltending goes. I mean, Pittsburgh's got 4 goalies now. When you count the guys in the AHL, Laurent Brossoit is doing a rehab stint with Rockford, coming off double hip surgery. But, he's available out there because Chicago, he's under contract to the Blackhawks, but they have Spencer Knight and Arvid Soderblom ahead of him. And so, all of a sudden I'm not saying these are, bona fide number one options out there, but there are some goalie options for teams that might need them, and we'll see if any goalies start moving. I think it could happen in this season for sure.
One more topic before we get to stick taps. I need you, CJ, to give us an update on construction plans for that arena in Milan Cortina. Bill Daly, Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly, spoke to the media today, was asked by our friend Matt Larkin, what is the actual percentage of chance NHLers don't go to the Olympics? This is what from Matt Larkin Bill Daly said. Depends on percentage you want to place on the possibility the rink doesn't get completed. If there's no rink completed, there's no NHL players going to the Olympics. Where are we at with construction on a rink?
Well, that quote says a lot. I mean, look, there's no news in that because the news we've already known. There isn't a plan B. You know, that's been established and reported by me and others. This is basically the Santa Julia rink, which is the main arena that's being designated for the Olympic play for both the men's and women's tournaments and the Paralympics. That if that doesn't come to fruition, there's no NHL tournament there. The fact, though, that someone in Bill Daly's position said that plainly, that's what gets your attention, right? So, while he's not saying anything that is news, he's saying pretty firmly or clearly or just not disguising the fact that there's a circumstance that you don't have this tournament. And, there's all kinds of ways we can go here. I mean, like, to me, the interesting part of the arena not being the right dimensions isn't that it's 3 feet short. Because in the end, I'm sure you can account for that in the neutral zone. Someone has since pointed that out to me since the story I wrote this week with Michael Russo at The Athletic that, since that came out, that there's ways that doesn't really matter. But it's the fact that it happened and the fact that there definitely were senior people that weren't in the loop on it till this week. Now, Hockey Canada officials seem to have noticed this months ago. In fact, I actually first caught wind of the fact the rink dimensions weren't quite right when I was at that Olympic orientation camp in August. I heard as part of a conversation where that was brought up, naively. And I must say, this is naive on my part. My reporter instincts must not have been good as I was emerging from summer. I was just assuming they were going to get straightened out. Like, I was assuming this was a problem that was going to be fixed. I didn't think it would be coming back up in the first week of December, and that it's true that we don't have, even though everyone signed off on an Olympics on NHL ice, which is 200 feet by 85 feet for those that don't realize it out there, we are getting a 196.85 foot length of ice and 85.3 feet wide. Again,
that's a lot of math.
I will say this, though. I'm not even sure the dimensions being a little bit off. Like, it's just more what it represents, right? And do you know where it leads me, Julian? It leads me to a place I never thought I'd get to.
Tell me.
I have been a vehement defender, and in fact, I've been quite strong at times when the NHL didn't send its players to the Olympics, that they needed to be there. I'm starting to wonder if, I was wrong to look at it that way. Because I think what these issues have highlighted is the problem with the Olympics. And first of all, one problem, it's not a hockey tournament, right? It's a hockey tournament played amongst many other sporting events. But the hockey as a result isn't necessarily the priority. You occasionally go to countries where they don't, the fact they have to build a hockey rink, that's kind of weird in a way, right? Now, most winter nations where you'd have a winter Olympics, I think there's lots of hockey rinks. But the NHL doesn't control what's effectively the biggest hockey tournament on earth. Like, they're a guest at the events. And that's what all these things highlight. Like the fact that the construction's been slow. The NHL can complain about it. They can try to push buttons. They can have meetings. They can give interviews, but they're not in charge of the construction, right? The specs can be off. Well, the IIHF signed off on those specs. Like, how that happened, I don't know. I'm not even sure if it's that important ultimately, but it does still speak to the fact the NHL only has limited, and the NHL Players Association only have limited sort of say or input into what's happening. And yet the league and the PA hand over the most important assets to stage this tournament. If anything, what it says to me is that Four Nations event last year was pretty damn good. That was run by the NHL and the NHLPA. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, do we need, I think the focus, quite honestly, should be more on developing a real World Cup. And I know that that's a longer term goal, but I'm not sure if you're the NHL, the NHLPA, if not, to me, one of the biggest takeaways, and they haven't even got to Italy yet, is just why even put this in the trust and control of organizing committees in certain countries where hockey isn't a priority? And I get that there is a wider benefit to the Olympics, and I've been there, and that's why I preached it, why I loved it, because it's so cool to go to the Olympics. And And I do think that matters to a degree to the athletes. But at the end of the day, if we're talking about staging the best on best tournament, it could probably be done elsewhere in places where you have an arena in place, where you have facilities, where you have fans, where you have control over the environment. Anyway, I might be wrong on that, but that's just my view here. Like, it's all well and good when these tournaments are staged in countries where hockey's important, because, you know, they played the 2010 Olympics in Canada in an NHL arena where the Vancouver Canucks still call home today. I believe, what was it called? Canada Hockey Place or something. They play free arena.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that name being
something like that. But you know, like they had an NHL rink. Even in Russia and Sochi, now that was a new arena they'd built, but like it's, you know, Russia's a place where they build ice hockey rinks. Like there's lots of them. Anyway. I'm on a tangent here, but should we just take out, I mean, you said it yourself, like ice hockey does not take priority over all of these different events. Like it's a travesty that we are even having this discussion where we are trying to figure out if construction is going well on this arena. That's a failure. Right. Exactly. It's not. It's a failure on the IOC. It's a failure on the IIHF to let it get to this point. Like, not every country is going to do this, but also like it's so interesting that we are at this point. To hear Bill Daly say what he said on Wednesday, the fact that you have been such an ardent supporter of best on best and your tune with the Olympics is changing a little bit. Like, this is the fact that there's no plan B. How is there no plan B? Why should there be a plan B? They've only had 7 years since they got awarded the games. Like,
you're a very good point. But like
I'm not in charge of logistics, but like a big part of pulling off an Olympics is logistics in any country, like in any place, right? Like huge part of it is you have to present a plan for venues and for housing and all those things. And then you have to execute on the plan and actually have venues to stage events and places for the athletes to sleep and all those things.
I agree.
It hasn't happened here. Like, and I will say this, the NHL 2-3 years ago was already sounding the bell on this. I remember going to the Board of Governors meeting in December 2023, and Gary Bettman was like starting to basically bang a pot. Like, what's going on with like they hadn't even broken ground. And so the NHL, to be like, I think there's only so much they can do. It's not their job to go and build the rink there. Now, how they didn't know about the dimensions, again, I just think it speaks to a larger issue. I'm not here to say that dimensions is like, I think it's like the symptom of a larger problem, right? I don't think it in and of itself, it's probably not make or break. I'm sure they'll play the games in that configuration. It certainly seems like there's no, I think that more people have looked at it. There's not necessarily true safety concerns about it, but it's still just, it's weird, right?
Yeah, it is. It should. And you make a good point. They've had all this time to get this ready. And the fact that they're doing this at the very last minute is a joke. It's an absolute joke.
Well, it's not done. It's December 4th.
It's not done.
The first game is February 5th or 6th. 5th or 6th. There's a women's preliminary round game.
Like there's construction going on.
Right. But like, this isn't like, there's supposed to be 33 games between the men's and women's tournament played in a 17-18 day window. So basically 2 games a day starting early February. Like, do we know like there's big things? Like, do we know if the ice is good enough?
They're not going to be able to test it right.
We now know the rink dimensions aren't proper. Like, the toilets flush. Is everything going to work? Like I'm not kidding.
Right.
It's a building that's under construction. Like that. Yes, there's a test event scheduled for January 9th to 11th. And maybe a month from now, this conversation will just be outdated and will look silly. Maybe they'll hold this test event and it will be the greatest hockey arena ever constructed. Or maybe they hold this test event and it's a freaking disaster. And then we're talking about the Olympics not happening. Because that is the outcome, at least from the NHL side. I don't know about contingencies that would happen for a women's tournament or the Paralympics or whatnot. But I mean, take Bill Daly at his word. The NHL has stopped its schedule for a specific tournament. The men's tournament is played between February 11th and 22nd. Mm-hmm. If there can't be games played at that Santa Julia Arena in that window, there will be no NHL participation at this Olympics. Now, let's hope, and I don't believe it's going to come to that, but the fact this is even being had, like, I should say too, I'm putting a lot of emphasis on the NHL. I spoke with someone at Double IHF this week. They are very concerned too. Like, this isn't just the NHL being a moody partner or just being demanding. Like, this is across the board. Anyone who's got insight into this file is saying this is a potential disaster waiting to happen. And anyway, I can't believe we're sitting here and having this conversation. But
this is like, holy crap. Like, the fact that it's gotten to this point, like, I can't believe that we are legit thinking like this might not happen.
Yeah, I don't, that might be a little far.
Maybe, but but to your point, the fact that we're discussing this at all.
Someone intimately involved with knowing what's going on with that arena said they don't just need a fire lit under them. They need a bomb detonated under them to get their asses in gear.
That's not good.
Yeah, 2 months from the start of the tournament. That's like, we can joke about it, but like, you know, this is a major construction project. This is a 16,000 seat arena. It's supposed to have a practice rink. As of August, there were no roads in and out of it. Like, literally no infrastructure around the building.
Oh no.
Like, I'm just saying, it doesn't paint an encouraging picture. Now, because I've been to those Olympics, and it actually hasn't covered the men's hockey tournament, which is largely where my focus has been at those games. But there typically is these kind of discussions around Olympics. Like, there's always some venue that's a bit behind or whatever. And usually they slap enough duct tape on it at the last minute and they can pull it off. And maybe that's what's going to happen here. But I do wonder if the larger takeaway, though, is like, even if the players who we know want to play best on best, if this almost like arms everyone more to want to hold a real meaningful World Cup, like, that might be the answer, right? It's hard not to look at the soccer world, the football world, and say the goal should be to get to where that is. Now, I'm not saying it will ever in our lifetime be on the scale.
Good luck.
Yeah, but the most prestigious national competition in men's football is a World Cup, right? Like, there's not even debate.
You're right.
So I think that's what I mean. I'm not saying it'll get to the scale or it's not going to be truly worldwide. Like, I'm being realistic.
No, I understand you now.
But I think that you should maybe want to mimic that, and maybe the Olympic tournament becomes a 23 and under tournament or whatever they do in soccer. Like, over time, I'm talking, maybe that's the outcome here. But I do think if you're the NHL, like, why you're not going to want to hand this over to someone else when you see what's happened with this. Not again.
That's a very interesting point. And I wonder how players would take to that. Is like, because they've been trained to see that, like, the Olympic gold, like, so many other players have had that opportunity to do it. That should be, obviously, the Stanley Cup's the pinnacle of the sport, but that's still something worth fighting for. Is fighting for a World Cup going to be the same thing? I mean, it's still best on best, but like, it takes a lot of work to get yourself to that point where that's seen as the right thing.
2 years ago, I would have sat here and we were doing our pod back then, and I would have said, Julian, you're right. No way players will buy into this. I think the Four Nations might have changed something, because I think the Four Nations showed that event can be on a level that, you know, that hockey frankly doesn't enjoy on a weekly basis as it is. And it's put on by the league and the Players Association in NHL buildings. Like, the atmosphere, right? It's not just that was special. Like, that's something that'll be hard to replicate too in Italy, because, you know, the fan, it's going to be different. There's no way around that. Now, I think the product on the ice is still going to be great, assuming that they make ice, assuming the boards hold up and don't collapse on themselves, assuming that there is a place for them to play. I still think that these games will be amazing and they'll be worth all the hyping up that we've put into it and all the talking about who's on the team and who's not. But, you know, I just think that what has changed in the last 12 months is we've seen a Four Nations tournament that was like, oh, wow, this could be the start of something special. Obviously expand it beyond Four Nations. You know, the league's looking at holding a 2028 World Cup, you know, split between Europe and North America as hosts. I think there's real potential for that to start to become the thing that matters more than the Olympic Games from a men's hockey perspective.
Today is the first day where I'm starting to let doubt creep in. And I'm not saying it's overwhelming, but I'm starting to let a little bit of doubt creep in about the likelihood of the ice hockey tournament going on at the Olympics. Not saying it's overwhelming, but just hearing you speak about it, like, that is not encouraging to me. No way.
Well, here's the thing. They've basically, the league and the Players Association have put the trust in the IOC that this is going to be okay. And that hasn't changed. Like even with the spec story of this week about the dimensions of the arena, the 3 feet too short that it is, as Peter Boss said, that he's always said the best Olympic player is a 196.85 foot player.
Great joke by Peter.
Great. I actually laughed out loud, like truly. But I still think that there's still trust there that this is somehow going to get pulled off, but there's doubt in other people's minds about it too. So I don't think your doubt is completely misplaced.
Do you have a stick tap to wrap up today's episode, which I got to say is, damn, it's a tough segue after that segment, but it's a good way to get us out of here.
Yeah, I'm tapping the stick on this Thursday for the Wall of St. Paul, Jesper Wallstad. I don't know if you've been following his travails, but he's got 4 shutouts in his last 6 games. Rookie goaltender for the Minnesota Wild. The most recent shutout coming Tuesday night in Edmonton, a team that traded away the draft pick that the Minnesota Wild used to get Wallstad in the 2022 draft. So not saying that Jesper was feeling any burn about that, but Minnesota did trade up to take him at the number 20 spot with Edmonton. And just a great story. I think there's a great story brewing in Minnesota with the Swedish goaltending mafia, as they're being called, instead of the Swedish house mafia.
Gustafsson and Wallstad. Nice.
And yeah, I mean, we're talking about a weird year. We haven't talked much Minnesota Wild on this pod, but they also have barely lost in the last few weeks. And Wallstad's a big part of it. And he's been a great story. I don't expect his pace to continue, but it just shows you sometimes what a great goaltender can do to change the outlook of your team. And the Wild have been cooking with him in goal.
I love that.
I also love his nickname, Wall of St. Paul.
The Wall of St. Paul. That's the first time I've heard that nickname. I love that nickname now.
Apparently, Michael Russo, our athletic colleague, might have been the first to pen that in a story. So
that makes a lot of sense. I feel like not much moves unless Michael Russo puts his pen to it. That's like the mayor of St. Paul, as far as I'm concerned.
The Wall of St. Paul from the Pope of St. Paul, maybe. I don't know.
I like that. The Pope. We're calling Russo the Pope. I love that. I'll give my stick tap to Andrei Markov. The Montreal Canadiens honored him for his time with the Montreal Canadiens on Wednesday night at the Bell Center against the Winnipeg Jets. Played 990 games with the organization. All situations defender. Very key player for that organization. During my younger years growing up, when I was still a Canadiens fan, that was a defenseman I liked to watch. He was so important for the team. Thought it was really cool that the Canadiens were able to honor him. Obviously, with him retiring, it was a little bit wonky with how that went down. And Jeff Molson did say that there would be something for Andrei Markov in due time. So it's a good thing that they're doing this now. Long overdue for him to get his flowers from the fans at the Bell Center. So I'll give him a stick tap.
I like that. Do I get it right? Numéro 79?
Yes, 79.
79.
Yes. So that way, well, your French is good. Your French is good on that.
I have selectively adequate French, but it's only on very specific things.
Yeah, well, the fact that you're trying is good. There are people who are actually Francophone who would appreciate that, I'm sure.
There you go. Yeah, remember number 79, though. The general, I saw PK Subban refer to him as.
Yeah, it's actually funny. There were a lot of people back in the day who just assumed that with the way PK obviously being boisterous and lively and the general Andrei Markov being more stoic, that those two just didn't get along. Couldn't be farther from the truth. They actually got along pretty well.
There you go. Hockey can bridge, generations, countries, all kinds of things.
Absolutely. Anyway, get your questions in for Ask CJ on our Monday edition of the Chris Johnston Show. Right now, whether you're on Twitter, X as they call it, or Discord, Blue Sky, wherever, get your questions in now, and we'll answer as many as we can on the next episode of the CJ Show. Great work as always. Follow CJ on Twitter. Follow his work at The Athletic. Follow my stuff too on Twitter and The Athletic as well. And we'll chat to you all next week. Peace.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.